Well, welcome everyone. I'm here to give the introduction to the AIA 2030 commitment, and we're glad that you were able to join us. Sorry for the technical difficulties. So I am principal of Green Bank Associates and a green building and sustainability consultant, but longtime AIA East Bay member. With me tonight is Seth Dunn, the 2030 commitment lead for his firm, Siegel and Strain Architects. And last but not least, David Arkin, the founding partner of Arkin Tilt Architects. He's also the co-director of the California Straw Bale Association and the AIA, a member of the AIA National Working Group for the 2030 commitment, as well as a chair of the Renewable Materials Group for the Carbon Leadership Forum. And that has everything to do with embodied carbon. So we'd like to also thank all of the attendees who have come and joined with us tonight from the San Francisco AIA COTE. And this is the rundown of the agenda. We're going to go a little bit quickly since we're a little bit behind, but I'll run through the basics of what the commitment is, the overview of the background and development of it. Seth will give some prep on the information you need to be aware of before the hackathon, which is coming up. If you haven't signed on yet, that's March 25th. And last but not least, David will take us through some stories from the signatories. We're going to ask really quickly and take a poll for letting us know who's in the room. So if you can please choose one of the below, and Mike will take us through and give us a poll. I think when we did this during the hackathon, we did have mostly B from my recollection, but who knows what it'll be tonight. Looks like it's neck and neck between architect, designers, sustainability staff, and firm leaders, which is great that firm leaders are here. Maybe we give it another 30 seconds. Should we go ahead and share results? So we have it's almost 50%, yeah, architects, designers, and internal sustainability staff, so welcome. And then it's great to see that 33% are firm leaders. So you can sign on if you haven't already signed on right after this session tonight, so welcome. All right, so we're gonna go to the next poll. And that's what reflects mostly the reason why you are tuning in. Either my firm's already a signatory, or one of the following, I just want to learn more. What's entailed? Kind of an even spread right now. Give it another 10 seconds. Okay, now they're coming in. Mostly looks like D, we have a winner. Would like to learn more about the 2030 commitment. And let's share that result. Yeah. Most of you are coming here to learn more about the 2030 commitment and the DDX so that you can consider signing on or advise your own firm, which is fabulous. It's exactly who we want to reach tonight. So thanks for sharing that. And that was the poll. So we're going to get right into it. What is the AIA 2030 commitment? And it really was a program that was supporting the 2030 challenge from Architecture 2030. And the AIA sees it as a way to, transform our architectural practice so that we can use data and actually work towards carbon neutral buildings, including developments and renovations by 2030. And what the DDX is, and that stands for Design Data Exchange, is the AIA's online platform tool for reporting progress. And it visualizes and gives the benefits of our collective action as a group. And this is taken directly from the Architecture 2030 website, which I'll direct you to, but literally it's a way of gradually raising the bar and setting targets every 5 to 10 years to get us in increments to zero and 100% carbon neutral in 2030. So right now, I say right now because the last time that we have reporting data for is actually 2019 data, right? This year we will be reporting last year's 2020 data. So it's a little bit, there's a time lag to do the reporting. But basically, what I want to say tonight is congratulations to the East Bay firms, two of them of which actually achieved the 2019 2030 target goal, which was 70% across their portfolio, right, of meeting the predicted EUI target. And that is an incredible achievement because I think only 26 firms nationally achieve that, and to have both Arc and Tilt Architects and Nolan Tam in the East Bay gives us great hope, and it's very exciting to see also all the other 20 signatories. I think we have 300 firms, is that right, Mike? Or so.
Yes.
In the East Bay membership. So what we've done is actually Ben, my co-chair, Ben Levy, has actually mapped this out, and we're starting to track all of our signatories. And so we're going to present this year our challenge, our COAT challenge, and we're calling for all East Bay AIA member firms to sign on to the AIA 2030 commitment so that we can achieve 100% by 2030. So a bit of background. How many of you, I can't actually see you because you're not in the room, but remember that cover from Metropolis magazine in 2003? I certainly do, where, we started to first pay attention to architects and realize that architecture was responsible for global carbon emissions to the tune of about 40%. And 28% of that is from operating energy emissions. So in 2006, Architecture 2030 started the challenge, and this is the basic premise of what it looked like. So today actually refers to 2019, which was the last year we have of reporting. But you see that our target for reporting this year, starting 2020, using 2020 data, the target has been raised to 80% of your entire portfolio to meet the AIA 2030 commitment. So that's actually quite a steep raising of the bar. And so it'll be interesting to see what the results of the data reporting will be this year. And then certainly you can see that in 2025, it advances to 90. We really only have 9 years left to go. So we've got to get on the stick and start to work. It doesn't matter where you are right now, just start. So we're going to take you through the steps today for signing on to the commitment. So the first thing is step 1, that the firm leadership signs a simple letter of commitment. And it's just a simple 1-page thing, very easy to do. It took me, maybe an hour or 2 to sign the whole, get the whole thing together and upload. Then you make a plan, which is a sustainability action plan for your firm, and you might review it every 3 years. But really, the most important thing is to get some semblance of your firm together and co-create a sustainability plan for your firm. We'll talk about details of that a little bit later. And then the last step will be tracking your data to keep your firm's data within the projects that you've got going on. And the hackathon will actually go into a lot more detail about, how to do that and how to actually input that. And simply that makes up your reporting. Then we'll actually be able to see online and visualize through the DDX platform the collective actions of our practice. So the evolution of the 2030 platform has been, that's what you see. In 2011, literally folks who were first starting to report were using a spreadsheet. By 2015, the AIA National had shifted to an online, the DDX platform, and created the first version, which is more or less what you see on the screen to the right. That's a screenshot. But then literally just last year, they relaunched an all new DDX platform. They've simplified it. It's not as complex. There's not as many confusing, optional fields and data inputs. So to get the latest and probably a live demo for the DDX Hackathon, I invite you all to register for the March 24th session. And Gwen Fuertes, another working group member on the National Code AIA 2030, commitment working group, will be there, as well as Seth. So here's back to the step one. First step is really that firm commitment letter. It's a simple one page, as you see an example here. And you can cover the following points. Really, you first pledge, simple pledge to the carbon neutrality by 2030, and maybe a short description of how sustainability is important to your firm and to architects in general, and expressing that commitment. And then literally, it might be a simple paragraph about how you intend to establish that commitment within your firm to meet those reduction goals. And that, kind of also implies both internally to your operations as a firm, as well as to your project goals. And then the last thing in the commitment letter is to actually pledge to create a sustainability action plan within 1 year, which you'll upload. So the first upload, so the first step is you go online to the AIA 2030 commitment, you'll log in your basic information, and you'll upload your commitment letter. The second step is to develop and upload the firm's sustainability action plan. This might take a little bit more time, but to help you understand what that is, there is and I'll give a list of resources afterwards in a few slides, but there is a link in the AIA 2030 commitment to all of the uploaded sustainability action plans of all of the firms, as well as obviously the general reporting data for your firm's portfolio. But here you can actually click on these links if they were live, and then you can actually read and take a look. They run the gamut. There's, I don't know how many are uploaded right now, maybe 180 or so. And you can click on each one and read them. And they run the gamut from literally a 2-pager, simple on a letterhead, nothing fancy, no graphics, right, to, really advanced, full color graphics, brochure type, 10, 20 pages. So you can take it as simple and as easy as you want to as complex and, with full graphics as you want. And really, there's no pressure to do either one or the other. As I said, they run the full gamut. So just to take a snapshot of what the typical process is for building a sustainability action plan. And that's first to actually gather your staff, because sustainability action plan is no good if it's just words on paper. What we really want to have happen is that we start to actually internalize and institutionalize those actions to which the firm has committed. So you want to bring your whole firm together, and you want to maybe review your firm's commitment letter together, and you want to talk about some of these things that you see on the screen. You want to, sort of do almost like a retreat type of meeting where you actually discuss your firm values and your philosophy, how sustainability builds into that, and what are your best practices within your firm. You want to talk about any targets. You may actually want to, advance on your targets, and you want to make some specific commitments. You want to certainly talk about your design process, and you want to talk about project standards and tracking and what you'll do differently, really, from what business as usual was before you made this commitment, to start to actually institutionalize with every project and with your own internal operations sustainability practices. So you're going to be looking at your structure, how you can actually maybe advance your firm operational protocols to achieve those sustainability best practices and your goals that you've set. And then certainly talk about what the challenges will be, because there, certain things will be more challenging than others. But it's good to talk about that so that everybody's on board. And that's the most important thing. So often we do these kinds of things and then it ends up on a shelf. And when new folks come on board, new employees, they really haven't had any introduction to it. So we want to make sure that it's ingrained and institutionalized within your everyday practice, not only internal operations, but also through your projects. And then come back and revisit. So that's a brief snapshot of what could be a recommended framework for the parts and the elements of a sustainability action plan. So it's really your firm commitment, your firm's design, philosophy, and approach, how you might approach evaluation and your reporting, and then sort of the educational and outreach, both internally and training and education internally, as well as how you outreach to your clients and potential clients and your general advocacy for the 2030 commitment. And David's going to give you a good example of what his firm does at the end of this program. And then you want to certainly then examine your own internal firm operations. So everything from, recycling practices to looking at how your commute is and how ways that you can actually reduce your own firm's carbon footprint. And then, like the firm commitment letter, it's a simple upload to the DDX to your account page. And then the wonderful thing is then you'll see, once you've uploaded that, you'll actually see your sustainability action plan amongst everybody else's. And again, there's some 180 plus. And it's actually a wonderful thing to actually go back and see that, you can see what, maybe pick some firms that you can actually look at as a goal, or pick something, and say, oh, that actually is a great model. So there's a rich bunch of resources for you online at the AIA 2030 commitments site. So the last step really is 3 and 4 is tracking your data and uploading your reporting, or doing your reporting, as we say. And so what you'll need to do is gather your basic project information for your portfolio, and then create, if you haven't already, your whole building baselines using a zero tool target. And Seth is going to talk to you about these. And this year, usually it used to be that around March 31st was the deadline to report for the previous year's data. But this year they extended it, like last year, to April 30th. So you have 2 months almost to do your reporting. So there's ample time to actually sign on shortly after this program and start to gather your data. And if you can report, certainly April 30th is a good deadline to get that firm-wide information in. And then you can then simply share your results and analyze those lessons learned. And really, it's 40% is that upfront gathering your data, and 50% is actually the value that participation in the 2030 commitment brings, which is all of that analysis and the lessons learned and the visualizations that the reporting tool gives you. And for that, you're going to have to come back to the hackathon on March 24th. So Seth, do you want to take us through some things that folks might need to prepare for the hackathon?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Alice. So yeah, I just wanted to give people time to prepare for the hackathon on the 24th. And so you'll have to do some homework before you show up. And so the idea of the 2030 commitment is that we present our full portfolio of projects, anything from a major renovation to a new construction project. And so for every project, you want to bring your gross building area, which includes exterior walls, and then you want to have the use types broken down in that building. So whether that's office, storage, meeting halls, if it's a multifamily residential, then you'll want to bring the number of units, the number of units per floor, number of bedrooms. And if you haven't already, go to the DDX and you can actually see that list if you put in an example project, or you could also go to zerotool.org, which is a way of setting an EUI goal, which I'll get to in a minute. And there you can see the breakdown of the square footage and the types and the use types for the space. So zerotool.org is a calculator that basically generates an EUI goal, and it's something that you can do in pre-design. Basically gives you you plug in the location of the building, the square footage, and it generates a baseline EUI, energy use intensity, and then a target that you're trying to achieve, which is 80% reduction this year from that baseline. So that's the goal. We also want the energy modeling data. So if you have a Title 24 report, you can, and it's done with a performance-based Title 24 report, that is an energy model. And you may be working with a mechanical engineer or a Title 24 consultant. And you need to ask them for a couple forms. Alice, if you can go to the next slide, sorry. Oh, one more. Yeah, so there's multiple ways to get your EUI data. You may have a lead project, you can get it from that report. You may have a Title 24 report, and then the pages you want to look for that is the Econ 1 form or the Perf 1 form, Table U. And both of those, you may need to ask your mechanical engineer for those forms. So you may not have those, even if you have a Title 24 report. So make sure you ask your mechanical engineer for those forms. And if you don't have a Title 24 report, that's okay. You can still enter an EUI goal from the Zero tool, and you can still set some goals for your project, even if you don't have the actual reporting data for the EUI. Let's see if the next slide. So here's what the Econ 1 form looks like, and it basically breaks down your energy usage for the year into gas and electricity. And on the right, you see the Perf 1 Table U, which does not break down by month, but breaks down the total energy usage. And so that data is needed for for calculating EUI, which we'll do in the hackathon on the 24th. And just a little word of warning, it's easy to confuse EUI with TDV, which is called time dependent value, and it's something that PGE uses. And that's oftentimes something that you see in the Title 24 report. That's in the table B. We don't want this. It's easy to confuse these numbers. So we're really looking for EUI and not TDV. And then finally, if your building has solar or on-site renewables, we need to have that data as well. And so you may have data such as you have a 7 kilowatt solar array on your roof. And we can actually get the kilowatt hours that's anticipated to generate per year. And you can go to the PB Watts calculator on the NREL website.
Perfect. Thanks, Seth. So this is a list of resources. The first one is actually for the 2030 commitment. So if you just click on that, it'll take you to the website page where you can log in and sign on and register if it's the first time. Second one will be the sustainability action plans. If you want to take a screenshot of this or take a shot with your photo with your camera, this is the one to take, but we will post this afterwards on our AIA East Bay Coat website, so folks will have access to these. So the challenge is on, and we're calling all East Bay AIA members firms to sign on to the 2030 commitment. We have about almost 4% signed on now, so we've got a little bit of a ways to go, but we want to get 100% by 2030. And now I'd love if If David could pull up his slides and we
Certainly.
can make the transfer. David's going to
I think
talk a
we're
little
up
bit.
on the screen.
Yes. Talk a
Great.
little bit about his journey through the AIA 2030 commitment.
All right. Thanks, Alice and Seth. So these are just a few techniques that we've employed that we might recommend towards being able to achieve net zero carbon, or at least begin to approach it. I will be the first to say not every project gets to 100% carbon reductions. First tip is to communicate that this is your priority. So we put it right front and center on our website that this is important to us. When we're interviewing with potential clients, these are a couple of the slides we use and have been using since the early 2000s. Once again, just letting folks know that this is going to be a priority that we'll be bringing to the design of their project. And as much as possible, we try to walk our talk, and I think that helps give our clients some confidence that these things, are achievable. Second bit of advice would be to craft a design process that helps to generate these sorts of high performance projects. And we find that when we follow the steps that we've outlined, these well-performing buildings sort of naturally fall out. The third is somewhat simple advice. It's something I think you all probably already do as architects, which is to follow the sun. We like to say that 75% of it is simply pointing the building in the right direction in terms of where the majority of your glazing is, and that's almost free. So it shouldn't be a tough sell. And then devices for solar control actually can add quite a bit of interest to an architectural design. Next would be to test it with tools. Just about every 3D modeling software out there has a built-in heliodon that allows you to quickly model where the sun is going to be at any time of the day, any day of the year. So put that to work. Internally, we use Saphira as a thermal performance modeling tool, but on our bigger projects, we'll actually employ a third-party building envelope and energy efficiency consultant just as a double check on our work. One of the priorities for our firm for quite some time has been utilizing carbon storing materials, photosynthetic resources such as straw bale, hemp, and bamboo, and then coating these with ultra-low carbon finishes, lime, clay, stabilized earth. Just trying to look at the upfront building impacts, and this is now something that's being reported in the DDX. Working with Arup and Stop Waste, we crafted a prototype project that actually shows that we can store carbon in our buildings, and buildings, the built environment can become the Earth's 6th carbon sink. A resource for understanding more about embodied carbon is the Carbon Smart Materials Palette, which is a project of Architecture 2030. And here you can see insulation, just a comparison between what some of the high impact materials are and those which actually take carbon out of the atmosphere and store it in the walls of a building. We employ the building emissions accounting for materials calculator from the Builders for Climate Action. And using this tool, we were able to show one client that their building was approaching carbon storing. And instead of talking about how we could swap in lower price foam instead of cork, they were interested in how much further can we go to actually get to carbon storing. Next bit of advice would be to presume to your clients that their project is going to be all electric and feature on-site PV, and let them talk you out of it. But new this year in the DDX, and this is very exciting, especially for we architects here in California, is offsite renewables can be used towards your commitment. So the clean blend that we have here in California allows us to offset our electricity both with on-site and off-site renewables. Last is don't be shy about communicating that this is what you do, and that's going to, of course, help let potential clients know that this is where they can go for a firm that really shares this commitment. Another example of ours, we're on a 3-story office building. We were able to store carbon in the walls by utilizing straw and wood frame instead of steel studs and foam. So we encourage you to sign on and get involved. Just a few things from our staff person who likes to enter our data. We recommend, or the way we collect it is we have an internal spreadsheet with all the fields that you end up entering on the DDX, and just ask our project managers to put the information in there. I've already mentioned a couple of the updates for 2020, but one of the biggest ones is that the template got a lot simpler this year. So hopefully don't let that discourage you in any way. Seth already mentioned the conversion from your Title 24 to the EUI that's reported in the DDX, so be sure to make sure you use that correctly. And once all your projects are entered the first time, the next year, all you're doing is updating those projects that are already there. They transfer from year to year and entering your new ones. And you should know that you can enter post-occupancy performance, and I'll be totally honest, we don't do a good job of this at our firm. So if you're feeling like, oh, I can't keep up, know that we all have a long way to go on this journey. Last bit of advice comes straight from AIA National, which is the very first field. The entry date should be the date that you started the project, not the date that you're entering the data. If you put in March 3rd, 2021, it's not going to report it in the year 2020. So a very important tip right there. And I'll just put this slide up. This is paralleling the links of upcoming events that Alice mentioned. We'll have the AIA National 2030 Commitment Working Group hosts office hours, and I think you can get to recordings of any that you have missed. The first one was yesterday. We have our hackathon on March 24th, so we hope to see all of you there. And there's been a Secrets of Success series that the AIA has hosted. 2 of those have happened already, but recordings of those can be found when you sign on for the 3rd one, coming up March 17th, and these will also be available on AIAU.
And the medium and large firms series were really, really excellent. Great showcasing of incredible projects and process by some of the leading signatories. So make sure you listen to those recordings. I think we're ready to open it up for questions. I was just trying to review the chat, and I think, David, thank you for answering actually most of them. Between you and Seth, I think most of them are covered. If anyone has a different question, there's one, just came in. Buildings in transit-rich locations, how is this credited? Is the question. Good question. I don't know that it actually takes into account, VMT. We're really talking about embodied carbon and operating carbon emissions here.
Definitely a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that hits a sector outside of buildings, but a very key one. So unlike LEED or Living Building Challenge, where it's looking at, sites served by transit, that is not something that the DDX is tracking.
Right. And then actually there was a question that I was trying to see if David or Seth, you could remember. I think that there was a question on how landscape architects can contribute to the commitment. And I think the name of the calculator was Pathfinder. which is an embodied carbon calculator for landscape that Pam from CMG Landscape Architecture just developed. I think it's fairly new, but it's online, so you can find that if you just Google Pathfinder or landscape embodied carbon. So it's an app.
And
Yes.
as we start tracking more of our embodied carbon, that I think will start to play in.
Yeah.
Sure, materials choices and their impacts. And the first thing that popped to mind for me was how often we use deciduous trees as part of our solar control strategy.
Right.
So what we have as a landscape surrounding the building has a direct relationship to the building performance.
I'm looking, and looks like Heather has her hand up. Can we unmute Heather, or can you unmute yourself?
I have unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was formerly with Nolan Tam, which is one of the firms that did so great. But what I keep on hearing from people is, and you guys put it here, all projects should be registered, and that's actually not true. And I think that that might scare people, and that's why one of the things that we decided to do was do the projects that we felt comfortable doing, and it just so happened that we did all of the good projects. But like I did some projects that are just furniture, so you wouldn't register that, or it was just a paint, it was just a remodel, so it was just painting. So, and then it was also my understanding that if it needs to be in a certain phase of the project, so if it's in CA, you don't do it. That I don't remember. If you guys could answer that question, because it might, firms that have 300 projects, that might scare them that they have to do all of the projects, whereas like, let's just do 30,
Well, yeah, I think the idea is to really get a full picture of your full portfolio, and that may not include something where you're just painting a room or just doing furniture, but it may, I would say, if you're touching the HVAC equipment and you are doing a major renovation, and that's a gray line of where you see a major renovation. But yeah, getting a full picture of your portfolio however you can.
Again, it should report, right? I mean, really, the AIA wants you to not cherry pick your projects, but certainly the first example you gave of where the scope of the work doesn't really meet
that's what I mean.
any reasonable sense, those obviously you might not report those. And furniture, painting, strictly interior.
Right.
Yeah, we're selecting great paint, and we're selecting
right,
great furniture, that's sustainable and stuff, but it doesn't have anything to do with the DDX.
There is a selection. Sorry, I just include that there is a selection for interiors only projects, which is in those cases you enter the lighting power reduction, the LPD, and that is some way that we can include data and track data on those interior projects.
And as I mentioned in the chat, performance is weighted by the size of the project. So like if we're doing a small addition on a house and it doesn't feature PV, those would be, might be very little, if any, reduction, but it's not going to skew our whole portfolio too far because we have bigger projects that, do a better job. And I can't emphasize enough that for those of us here in California, for our mostly electric or all electric projects, if your clients are buying energy from the grid and it's a close to 100% renewable blend, that counts towards your portfolio.
So did that answer that question? I think looks like there's another one in the chat, and I can't see the raised hands for some reason, but Mike, do we have any other raised hands?
That may help.
Well, then you'll see my chat. If you, there's actually a comment in the chat from a Courtney Miller. If you analyze buildings in isolation from their urban design impact, that's a huge mistake. And she's claiming that, I think there's an example of a multifamily building that is 8 stories and uses 5 stories of wood over concrete would receive negative marks. Not necessarily, but the DDX is mostly measuring operating emissions, and then it's just reporting on embodied carbon emissions just this year, right? That's a new, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, David and Seth. That's a new entry. Data collection for this
carbon
year.
is a new field for this year, and that's it's still optional. So if you're not tracking your project's embodied carbon, don't feel like, well, I can't even bother.
Right.
It's totally optional. The point that Courtney's making is a really good one, that the transportation impacts of the location of a project are huge. I will take that back to the National Working Group and just see if there's something that they want to do with that, because it's a good observation that hadn't occurred to me.
It has to do with sort of the boundaries, right, of what we're, accounting for in our carbon emissions. And you have to draw the boundaries somewhere. So yeah, good question to raise. Is there another question that came up? Not seeing the rest of the chat. Does someone want to just raise a hand? Oh, one more. There's Kirsten says, is the data reported for the year construction was completed, and how is the baseline established that one starts from? Okay, so I think Seth, you actually answered this. So if you want to just run through that again to address those 2 questions.
Yeah, so in schematic design, you may not have an energy model yet. You can enter your goal data, and then you can update every year or every phase through DD, through CD, through CA. You can keep updating as you have more information, as your goals change, or as you have more updated information. And then finally, you can end by the project by entering actual energy usage data if you track that from the PGE bills.
And the baseline can come from the zero tool.
Mm-hmm.
Did that answer your questions, Kristen?
It's a little bit tricky when you're first starting, because you're going to have projects that are in all phases of design. And you just have to dive in and get started. But then in subsequent years, one that was entered in schematic design will be in CD or CA or done by the next year. So
once you're in, it's a lot easier to just keep updating the numbers.
I agree.
And I think that that'll be clear when you do the demo. I would suggest coming to the hackathon, because they'll be able to take you in live and you'll be able to see the field. And I think that the team will take you through some of those answers to those questions you have of, what kind of data and what's the baseline and where does this go and what is reported. So I think that coming to the hackathon actually will help you a lot. I know the first time I went into the DDX, yeah, it was pretty confusing. Of course, it's all new now, and supposedly it's simplified. So that'll be a great help. Any more questions that people have?
Alice, I'd like to make one point of clarity, and
Yes.
Mike's not going to like me saying this, but I'll say it anyways. You do not have to be an AIA member firm or individual to sign the 2030 commitment and have a sustainability action plan and report your progress. So I want to encourage everyone who's here who might not be an AIA member to consider signing the commitment anyways.
That actually makes me feel just fine. If we get 100% of everybody to start working on this, then we've got a better chance of actually being successful.
Yes, absolutely. And really, I think the wonderful thing about hearing David's story was the way that we really want to convey the benefits to all architects of actually taking this commitment seriously to climate action, because literally it is the singularly most impactful, meaningful action we can take. We often say, just as people, we say, well, what can I do? I'm one person, right? But you have such agency as an architect, right? You not only have your own carbon footprint within your firm, you also have all of the impact that you have on your projects to bring them to zero carbon. And you also then touch upon all those people, the clients, all the sub-consultants, all the contractors, everyone who's involved, right? And their neighbors that they tell about, or, you know, the publicity that the projects gain. All of that is the influence and the outreach and the education and awareness that we need to spread to actually have climate change action make collective, meaningful impact. So I want to thank you guys for really hanging with us today and coming back for the hackathon, which is going to be great. Hopefully they'll just, we've removed some of those barriers and encouraged you guys to just hang with us, and then you'll begin to see the benefits, and you'll begin, you know, often like people do ask me, like, what's this commitment all about? And, you know, I can't do this. It's just too much data. It's just too much, right? Literally those simple 2 or 3 steps that I went through today don't take that long and actually are so worthwhile and bring value to you as a person, I think, and to your practice. So thank you again all for attending. This has just been so great. So I appreciate you all coming, and thank you again to Seth and David. Yeah, so looking in the chat again, do we have any other questions, last minute questions?
One thing I'll add is nobody's perfect at this. You know, we as if you're meeting California code, you're already at 53% better than the baseline. And as California, we're leading the way as in the nation. And yeah, the 2030 reporting helps us get further from code.
Yeah, and actually, the other resource that I forgot to point out at the very end was the 2030 commitment report. So annually, the AIA puts out a aggregate number of our progress. And they've also posted online on the website all of the previous year's reports. So it's really great to actually, if you want to actually feel impact and see some meaningful action, go to the early ones and then progress through each year, and you see how far we've advanced, so that you can actually, you know, it's so hard because we're so deep in the weeds and into our projects. It's so hard to actually see that progress, right? To feel that. But I think if you look through all of those reports from, I forget what year they first started, 2015, 2011, whenever we started, you can actually see the progress. And so I think that encourages everyone to join on even more, because you can actually say, you know, here's the data, right? And here's the progress we are making. So thank you again, everyone, for attending.
We look forward to seeing everybody at the DDX Hackathon in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
Invite your friends.
Yes. Thank you all. Good night.